Hi, everybody. It's Eric from Section 8 Comics. We got another episode of Making Comics. I'm here with
LJ
Wilson,
and we're going to be showing another strip of The Mark.
Yeah, it's a different strip than the one I was spitting. I think there's actually a full strip.
Yeah, this is actually a full 4-panel strip.
I'm fast!
well, as before, this is where you're inking it on
An Illustrator.
Illustrator.
And unlike last time where I was using the line tool and amazing you and pissing you off, I'm using the brush on the human character as I was describing before.
So you're still progressing in your inking style at this point.
Yes.
But this is more of what you're doing now?
It's closer to how I'm keeping it now.
Okay.
And again, for anybody who's watching at home, this is sped up, so this is not how fast LJ works. Because we'd be done a lot sooner with a lot of our books if it was.
I tell you, I do find it funny how a lot of these speed videos, people don't realize when they mean speed videos, they sped it up. Some people are out there thinking this is how fast we draw.
Ow.
And I wish it was, but at the same time, is that misconception. Yet you know that there are artists out there who are learning how to draw through these videos, and they're thinking they have to go this fast. So there probably are a few of them doing it this fast.
And those people are insane.
They're going to burn out at 12.
Yeah.
But The Mark is an interesting phenomenon. When we Jason Antolic, who's the creator of The Mark, he is not known for doing comedy. He's probably one of our most serious writers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And we started talking about it, and he came up with the concept of The Mark, and he did I want to say 6 10-page minis, and I'm like, this is fucking hysterical. And we were like, can you do like a webcomic? And he's like, sure, no problem. And to talk to him, you wouldn't realize that this is his kind of comedy, but he has such a knowledge of comic books that he was able to just draw on all this. Which strip is this? Is this
I don't know the numbers. Because it was just like, this is here to work on, I'm going to work on it, and that's it.
Yeah, it was funny. Sometimes the pages came in batches.
Right.
And they wouldn't necessarily have a number on them. And in some cases, for the artists, they don't need the number. They just need to do the work.
Yeah, in fact, I think I ended up putting them in a different order than he wrote them, just because since they were a lot of one-shot stories. Oh, yeah, this is, again, this art was done by J.P. Cheatham, and if I'm not mistaken, this is the one where what's called all technology is out to get The Mark.
So this is more of the recent set of strips, or the latest set of strips with the technology. Because after this, I think I start drawing the series. Right.
As things happen from time to time, personal life gets into the way, so J.P. Cheatham couldn't continue doing the strips, so you ended up taking it over.
Right. And one of the really good things about The Mark is it's really more about the writing than the artwork. So it's okay in his series that we could have different artists. We even talked about having some rotation of other artists that we work with to see if they want to draw a couple of strips.
Yeah, I always thought it would be great to if the series ever took off really severely, I wanted to get big name artists to do a strip here and there and stuff like that.
Exactly.
And I just want to apologize to anyone who's an actual inker who may be watching this and just ripping their hair out and going, "You're doing this all wrong."
Well, I don't think there's a wrong way to do art. I mean,
it's not that there's a wrong way. It's just sometimes there's a
less efficient.
There are different ways.
It's different, but there's also the rules. That we talked about. You have to know the rules before you can break them. I don't know the rules, so I could be breaking them right now.
Well, it was funny because one of the artists that we know from back in the day, Camilla D'Erico, she is making a big name doing.
That's weird. It's just like there's a white halo around it.
That's what I was saying before. That's from the settings.
Yeah.
And then we're watching it on a television screen, so it'll look different than it would on a computer screen.
Or even a final product and when it's printed and all that stuff. But when I was talking to Camilla, she had put out a book about her style of how she drew and stuff one of the first things she puts down is I never learned how to draw. I taught myself. This is not the way they do it in, because she has a very anime style. She's like, this is not, or as far as I know, this is not the way they do it in Japan and stuff like that. This is the way I do it.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, she's an Eisner winning artist. I think she may not be doing it the right way, but she's doing it the way that works.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing with art is sometimes it's just with feeling. You can learn all the technical stuff you want, but then at the end of the day, you have to use that knowledge to the best of your abilities, and this is the best LG is able to do.
I can do better.
As someone who's doing
that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing about this. Is like what's called. This is how you learn and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's from the practicing. To me, it's like what was making me rip my hair out as I'm watching it being done was you would do the same line like 40 times. But to me, me with a brush and the ink, once it's down, it's down.
Yeah.
There's no
there's
no Z button in life. There's no.
Aren't you the one that told me that? Aren't you the one that told me that what's called? At one point, you actually were inking something and you tried to undo.
I did. And if I didn't stop myself, I think it would have worked. I think the universe would have reset those few seconds for me.
So in the middle of having a brush and ink and stuff like that, and just putting ink to the page, if you had really thought about it and made the motion of Control Z,
yes,
you would have undone.
I would have undone that. I would have undone reality, but I don't know when it was last saved. That's the problem.
All right, so what's called?
Yeah, like there are plenty of times where where as I'm doing it and I'm recording, I'm just like, I'm pretty sure other people are just like, you're just supposed to put the line and accept it. But if the line could look better, then make it better.
Yeah, there's been a few times because after he's done inking the pages, I get them. Occasionally, I would have to do a cleanup or a fix here and there. And again, this is because this is our project and I'm the editor-in-chief. I figured I'll make a change. Making that executive decision. But I don't really have to do much to it. Maybe occasionally thicken a line here or there, and that's about it. So
like I'm doing right there.
But yeah, so by the time I get the page, to me, this is done. This is fine. I could color it, letter it, and we could go to print with it. So I feel that LJ compliments JP so well on these pages. I may have to have you ink one of mine.
Okay.
Well, to see how that looks.
I think it's interesting because JP, from what I understand, also never had any formal training, and I think had he been able to stick with it, and like I said, if life hadn't gotten in the way, he could be a phenomenal artist. Because there are times when you could see like when he's having a lot of fun with it, and he's really coming out and creating something interesting. But I think that LJ's experience with you helped him learn how to fix whenever JP messed up and he didn't know it.
Yeah. And again, LJ has that. Even though LJ is not formally trained from school, he has access to artists that a lot of people don't. Having access to me, to Tom Chu, to Hector for inking, Alita. So there is Sean Chen.
I've never asked anything from Sean.
No, but you've been there when we have conversations about art and what have you.
Shout
where
out to Sean Chen.
So we know a lot of people, and yes, I'm name dropping, but I've learned from so many of them.
Oh, sorry, I dropped the name.
Well, but by that same token, you've also done the reverse. I mean, Nadir, Gino, they've all also learned from you guys.
Right.
So I mean, like what's called
my cabal of interns.
Well, it's interesting because I remember hearing you talk about how back in the day, the old school artists that you learned under were older guys who were working for Marvel, and they had no problem with teaching you anything because they were like, what's called, yeah, you want to know something? Great, we'll teach it to you. And then there came another round of artists who were very hesitant to teach anybody anything.
Right.
Because they were like, what's called, like, well, if I teach you, then you can steal my job and stuff like that. And then, but we've always been of the mentality of like, what's called, knowledge of this stuff should be shared.
Yeah, that's the only way you get to learn.
Yeah,
I've gone to houses for inking. Even though I credit Rich Parada, the first inker that invited me to his house was Harry Candelario, who was sharing a studio with Hector Collazo, and they both took the time to teach me about inking, how to ink with a pen, and I could not get it. But they gave me the basis. And then being neighbors with Rich Parada, he lived in the same neighborhood with me, and he helped teach me by using a pen, using a brush, and for a while I was doing backgrounds with him. And he was taught by Keith Williams, same way of this kind of mentorship, internship type thing where, we're being taught. Hell, I'm still being taught to this day. I learned a trick from Larry Hama, who had posted on his Facebook page, this is how we used to do this kind of what was called crinkling, where you would basically take cellophane and put it into the ink and then put it on the page. And you got a really interesting looking effect. And
so you had to go get cellophane and
no, just the knowledge of seeing how that was done. It's like, that's cool. I don't have anything to use that on, but that's an idea that's now in the wheelhouse, into the toolbox, that you'll never know where you're going to be learning these things from. And I was really lucky to be able to, talk to artists. Doing art returns for Marvel, I was able to see the artwork. One of the books that were done for the Western books, this effect of cowhide on a character's jacket was done with, when you look at it, you realize there's this guy's fingerprints. He was dipping his fingers into the ink and just putting it on the page to create this pattern that was unique and really great. I think it was Leo Marco was the one who did the artwork for that. And again, just looking at the art, you learn a lot. And I think the biggest thing that I learned looking at original artwork, there was whiteout on the page.
That's your big thing.
These guys can make mistakes. You could use whiteout to fix it and go from there.
It's funny because I remember when you first met April, and the two of you started talking. April Diaz, who does the art for the Hookup.
Available now online. And on Comixology?
Yes, on
Comixology.
You pimping whore.
Shout out to Comixology for having all our books on there. Hey, John.
Anyway, I remember I gave her a chance at what's called doing this because she's trained for it. She went to school for art, but she hadn't done anything professional other than a couple of wall murals and stuff like that. So I was like, would you be interested in working on a comic strip? And she jumped at the opportunity. And I remember you telling her the whole whiteout thing, and she's like, I know, it makes me feel better knowing that what's called people make mistakes and that I can fix it and stuff like that.
Yeah, because when we looked at artwork to study from, comic books, the only thing we've ever seen is the finished product.
Yeah.
And you don't realize that there is, even though you read the names and there's a credits page, you don't really know what each person is doing and what they're contributing to. You don't realize how much an inker brings to the story. A lot of the times if someone's famous, there's usually the first person to be famous is the writer, then the artist, and then everybody else was a part of it, but you don't realize how much of a collaboration it goes into a comic book. How great the Fantastic Four issues were drawn by John Byrne, but Terry Austin's inks on them are phenomenal. And then when you have a chance, if you ever have a chance to look at original pencil, check out what they're doing because you learn so much more about it. And then when you see the inks, you can see how much the inker brings to the story. And I know for years I didn't appreciate inkers as much as I should have until I really saw the work that went into it, until I became an inker myself and realized how much work gets put into it. Especially those books in the 80s where this is before computer coloring was able to, I guess, take some shortcuts and hide some things.
Right.
How much the inker was doing on it. We all applaud Frank Miller's work on Daredevil, but Klaus Jansson's work on it is what really made those books pop.
I remember hearing this. This is just a legend, and I don't want to name names of artists and pencilers and inkers, but apparently there was a penciler.
Sam. Sorry.
There was a penciler who was notorious for making a lot of details into his art. So when the inker got it, he's like, well, I've only got X amount of time to do it. So he would just erase stuff out of the background and say, I'm not inking that, I'm not inking that, I'm not inking that.
Yes, I heard a similar legend.
And I don't want to say any names because it sounds messed up, but it makes a lot of sense. This is what's called. We got to get a finished product done. We got to do the best we can, but we also got to do it within a timely restraint. I mean, because you and I are doing we do Section 8 comics on the side.
It's our side bitch.
We would love to, we would love for it to be our primary job and stuff like that. But we have day jobs. You do freelance for a lot of people, so we have to figure out timing issues. So it's like what's called like how can we get this done as fast as possible? So I totally respect the whole idea of like what's called like, there's a lot of people in this crowd. I don't need all these people in this crowd. I mean, realistically, the reader's gonna know there's a lot of people there. He's got 100. I only need 20. Race. That makes a lot of sense to me. As a fan of art, it makes me weep a little.
Yeah, I've seen pages where, again, I guess if we're not mentioning names, where someone drew a ton of robots, and basically he wrote to the inker, I've counted every single one of these robots. If there's any of them missing, I'll come after you. But again, it's
that's funny.
That's hysterical.
And that's hysterical. So, you have to have fun with it, but at the same time, you got to get the pages done.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. What's his name? Chris Batista. He was doing
I know him.
Legion of Superheroes.
Yes.
And what's it called watching when you run into him at cons, very often you'll see some of his pages that he's working on. And I remember one convention when he was first starting with Legion of Superheroes. He had he's like, I have to have everybody on the page. So I had to have like 40 or 50 people on the page. And then I occasionally have to have stories where there's crowds of people around them who are not the main characters. So he started using all these different other characters. Like he was using people from like Farscape, from Serenity. He even used, if I'm not mistaken, the old Atari Force team. And the guys called him back, goes, we don't own that anymore. Because apparently at one time, Atari Force was a, what's called, DC comic book that came out back when the Atari 2600 and the Atari 5200 were out back in the early 80s. But that was a purely licensing deal. And his editor goes, you got to take that out right now.
So everything else was fine, but he had to take the Atari thing out.
Well, it's sometimes what you get caught doing.
Yeah.
I mean, Terry Austin and as I said, John Byrne were drawing a lot of those X-Men books. And when they were in space, there was an issue where there was a crowd of people. But if you really look into the crowd, Popeye was in there. I think the Xenomorph alien was in there. They would just toss in characters really tongue-in-cheek because they knew they were also going to be blocked out, meaning they were going to be colored like a solid color, like a purple or something like that. So you kind of got away with it back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, I remember there's an issue of the Avengers where two FBI agents who are dressed in all black suits with white shirts, black ties, black sunglasses, and black hats. One is rather thin, the other one is short and fat. One is Jake and the other one's Elwood. That's all they ever say. They never say they're the Blues Brothers, but they're like, they walk in and I'm like, that's funny. Did the editor realize, or did he let it go? Did he say, it's on the line, we'll let it go and stuff like that?
I think
you never know.
Well, you never know. I mean, there was an issue of Thor drawn by Walt Simonson, and when this is when he has the new secret identity, where he was the
Eric's.
No. This is when he was. He basically just put on he put his hair as a ponytail and glasses. And that's basically Thor's new identity. He was like a construction worker.
Wasn't his name Eric?
I don't know if he took that.
Eric was the ambulance driver.
Oh, okay.
So I don't recall what name he took at the time, but he was basically Thor in disguise. I mean, that's what all secret identities are. And he runs into Clark Kent,
really
knocks him over, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you there." And Clark Kent, you only know him as Clark, because woman who looks a lot like Lois Lane was like, Clark, are you okay? And Clark is basically in a monologue. It's like, he pushed me down. And he couldn't believe that he got knocked over. And this is a regular Marvel book, but here's a guy with glasses who kind of looks very familiar.
Well, what's cool, I think I saw that a lot more when I was younger than I do now, but there was a lot of little humorous things that they used to do. There was a point where, what was the Hulk sidekick's name?
Which time? Rick
Amadeus
Jones?
Cho, Rick Jones.
Rick Jones. There was a point where Rick Jones was dealing with some issues that were similar to what was going on to Snapper Carr. Snapper Carr is on the phone. Snapper Carr is a DC character. Rick Jones is a Marvel character. Mm-hmm. Snapper's on the phone talking to his friend Rick. Because really? You had to do it, and you had to do it, and you had to do it. Are you watching my life? And it was that kind of joke and stuff like that. And I was like, that's funny. Because Marvel and DC, I think it's just an evolution of ideas. Sometimes certain timelines, certain things just happen at the same time. And it's not, I don't think of it as necessarily that they are copying each other. I just think like,
Great minds think alike.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, like, Batman and Captain America died at around the same time.
Yeah.
I don't think one was copying the other. I think it just kind of happened. I mean, I could be wrong. They could have moles. And there could be a whole spy story going on between Marvel and DC I don't know about.
Well, back then, there wasn't this competition. You know, companies that you have freelance. There's only so many freelancers, so they're all working for each other, or working with each other. Everyone who's not everyone. A lot of editorial of DC right now was Marvel's '90s editorial. So people are working for you know, you got people working for Marvel and DC who worked for other companies as well. So, and then sometimes there are ideas where, this idea didn't sell at Marvel, maybe I could sell it at DC and change this character for that character. I heard a story where one guy resold the same story to 3 different companies.
Really?
Yeah. I haven't really was able to confirm it, but because of the stories, you know, you read the stories and come on, most of them, especially if they're street characters, are kind of the same thing. You have a sub character that they have to go after. They lose their first fight and then they win their second fight. You know, that was most of the books in the 90s. So,
was it dealing with a drug dealer?
Probably.
Because I think I probably read that book.
You know, so again, the industry is so small. We all worked for each other at one point or another.
Yeah, it's. I love comics. I've always have. I love the combination of both the art and the storytelling. So I'm a little bit more forgiving when it's something along the lines of like, hey, didn't they just rip off this guy? Didn't they rip? I'm like, if I enjoyed the story, I don't fucking care. Everything's a little bit. Everything's inspired by something else, so everything's ripped off and ripping somebody else off if you want to be rude about it. But if it's a good story, I don't care.
Right, and again, you know, there's something to be said about the possibility of the conscious mind. You know, the automobile was being created in 2 different places on the planet at the same time. Just who got there first?
Yeah.
Same thing with the telephone, I think.
And the light bulb.
And the light bulb.
Actually, no, the light bulb was out for years. Edison just made it better, made it work.
Yeah.
He didn't invent it.
Yeah.
He just took something that wasn't working and made it work.
Yeah, I mean, like, what's called... I read something along those lines, and it's like one of those things where it's like, Edison didn't invent the light bulb. It's like, well, we really didn't have it before him, because someone invented what they called a light bulb, but it never worked. What was it, like, if 10-minute gap was the most you could use it for, or something like that?
Yeah, even when Edison had it, quote-unquote, working, it only worked for about 10 minutes.
No, but I mean the guy who invented it before him. It was like somebody had come up with a concept, and it was only... The most he could get was 10 minutes, and Edison was the guy who got it to go, like...
To basically
to
make
be something
it work.
useful.
Right, because he used he bought a few different patents and merged together to make it work.
Yeah.
That's how the legend goes.
Huh?
I'm like, get the line done.
So
that those X's...
brush?
Those X's are assigned to the inker to fill that entire area with black, right?
Yes, called spotting the black.
Okay. Now, was it you, Wilson, who told me the story of that? What's called a first-time inker didn't know what that was,
Yeah.
so he just
Wilson.
inked the X's.
So he just inked the X's, and then the editor for that particular book was sitting in the bullpen filling it because there was not enough time to send it back. Yeah, so it's called Spotting Blacks. Usually, that's the first thing an inker or an assistant would be doing. Would be doing things like spotting the blacks, ruling lines, things that are kind of mechanical in the way that they're learning the process that way. So this new inker probably was not being taught by someone. Might have been self-taught. The pages look great, but he wasn't aware of that was the indication for it. Another one is BWS, and does not stand for Barry Windsor Smith. What those stands for is
Black with Stars?
Black with Stars.
Okay.
And again, that's
See, I pay attention when you talk.
there you
What's
go.
that mean?
Black with stars.
Yeah.
It means it's a space scene, and what's called.
Okay.
Space or night.
It does not mean
this,
put an African American there who has stars on him.
so this area.
I don't know that.
I'm telling
Now
you.
I do.
Right. So this area needs to be blackened, and it has stars on it.
Okay.
So BW black with stars. And like Eric pointed out, the X's, because the penciler doesn't really need to sit there and fill in all that stuff. Because
Right.
then what happens is he spent all that time, and the inker has to erase it. Because you have all that graphite on the paper. What happens is you put the ink on, the ink doesn't get to the paper, it sits on the graphite, and then they may have to finish inking that page again. Because you want the blacks to be on there very solid. So this way here, once they get scanned in, you don't have to do that much cleanup on the page. So it's, again, all part of the process of what you learn as you go.
What I think is interesting is that what's called. I'm seeing LJ's making these lines that what's called.
They look like kanji.
Yes,
They look like, is his eyes saying something?
It took me a moment to realize that what's called. He's not making mistakes because what's called. He's blocking this stuff off, but he like has these lines that are going past the thing, and I'm like, what's going on? And then it took me a moment to realize, oh yeah, if you're gonna black the whole thing out, he just needs to know.
Yeah. There's no
Right.
reason to put detail.
And what's interesting about this is that's how you do it traditionally. So LJ has taught himself to ink on
an
the
inker.
page like an inker would. You outline everything. So this way here, when you fill it in, or in traditional, you have your assistant come in and fill it in. You make it as foolproof as possible. But the great thing about the computer, like the mistake he made a second ago, you could undo.
No mistakes, just happy little accidents.
There you go.
Who was it told me that once?
Bob Ross.
Bob Ross.
No, it was an artist. Mark,
Bob Ross.
My-
is
Bob
an
Ross
artist.
was an artist.
Sir.
a penciler. Sorry. Go ahead, correct me.
Bob Ross knows how to use a pencil too.
He drew Spider-Man.
Wilson.
Mark
No.
Bagley.
Mark Bagley. Like he was doing a sketch.
Damn, I'm good.
And he made a mistake. He's just like, nope, I'll just, because I think he was doing it with a pen. He's like, I'll just incorporate it in. And it became a shadow.
The Shadow?
Not the shadow, a shadow.
Oh, okay.
Now, what's called LJ, you don't actually off the computer. Do you draw at all?
No.
So what's called all your art skills are computer based, for lack of a better phrase.
Yeah.
So have you ever tried like sketching or anything like that?
Once in a while, I have.
Do you feel that has this made you any better?
No.
Okay, so you just still
Hasn't
bad.
made me better, but it hasn't made me any worse.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. All right.
So we'll leave it at that.
All right.
If there's no computer, I'm not working.
no, it's not that. It's more of, it's just,
You're aware of your ass.
yeah,
Your
I'm
ability.
aware of where I'm at, yes.
All right, so I have a
So when the
question.
bombs go off and we lose the internet and computers, LJ's not going to be drawing. He's going to be digging ditches.
Well, I do have other
For the new
marketable
society.
skills. I'll be building houses. Because I can.
When you do inking like this, do you tend to go for the whole page, or is your goal like, let me do this panel? Or, like, what is your mindset when you're going into it?
How much can I get done before I go, I've had enough?
Okay.
That's my mindset, because sometimes it's just like, I'll sit there for an hour, get a lot done, not because it's simple, but because I got a good rhythm going. Or sometimes it's just like, I've had enough, I gotta walk away because the computer's acting up on me, something isn't working right, or it's just like, this, why is this, or I have to restart, and just like that that kills my flow.
Whereas traditional, it's like, I'll ink this area because this area is wet. So
That's interesting. You never have to worry about that, do you, LJ?
I don't.
And what's called your hand positioning is actually a factor when you're traditional inking it.
sometimes you have to work on maybe 3 pages because you can't get to like areas because you don't want to smudge it. I tend to, when I'm working on certain things, is like if I'm working on hair, that's kind of my mindset as I'm inking the hair. And if, let's say, there's this character on the page, I'll do all that character's hair on that page because that's kind of the mindset that I'm in. I don't have to change tools. Where if I'm then doing like straight lines, like backgrounds, I'll do all the backgrounds first.
Now here's a crazy
'Cause I have the
question: do you
rulers.
have to ink in a certain order?
That's not so crazy.
No, I mean in the sense of like what's called like all right, like say you have an upper corner, the 4 corners of the page. Like, would you have to ink in a certain order so that you're not smudging it later on?
Kind of like I would basically have to work from left to right, up and down.
Okay.
Is almost how you do it. But then again, sometimes it's what you're feeling on the page. So you could work a little bit on panel 1, flip the page around, work a little bit.
Yeah,
on
he's
another
filling up the
panel.
page.
So
No, it's just like this entire statement. If you remove the word pages, you can fit other things in, and we're talking about a sex life.
Work it up left to right, see how it goes, see how it feels.
If I have to,
Right.
I can take it and flip it upside down.
Slap it, flip it, rub it upside.
Oh no!
All right.
So yeah, it's as you're doing with the artwork, and so sometimes I'll ink a couple of pages because you may want to have the page dry a little bit so you don't run into that problem of smudging. Because it happens, because you could think a part is already dried, and then you move your hand and all of a sudden, oh damn, I gotta clean this up.
So another question. This is actually another layer, right? You're not actually on the layer that the pencil art is
Right.
on. So once this is all done, you don't have to erase it. You just make that layer. You just get rid of that layer.
Yeah, the only thing I have to do, really, altering the artwork wise, is I have to change the how. That was shock. I was just sudden. I have to change how transparent it is, so I make it lighter. But an inker would do that anyway, erasing.
Okay.
So it's like I'm not that much different than an inker, except that my tools are different.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's called? Well, we're gonna stop it there, and what's
You
called?
have no choice.
Well, I can keep talking, but the video's over. So what's called? What's called? For Making Comics, this has been Eric.
LJ.
And Wilson.
See you.
Bye.